And welcome back to Black Renaissance. Please welcome Al Sasser. He's a case manager assisting formerly homeless people in the Tenderloin and West Oakland. Thank you so much for joining us. And we've been talking just briefly about some of your work. Your work is really talking to and sort of educating people from all across the spectrum, but particularly people who have been homeless and people who have served time in jail and are sort of making that transition. So talk to me about this curriculum that you're teaching.
Well, I developed a curriculum just really designed to just bring the level of awareness up. Most people who are formerly incarcerated, after a lengthy period of time, they measure the success of their reacclimation based upon the accumulation of things. And what my curriculum does is to really focus their attention more on the effects of being isolated or institutionalized, and to try to start them in a process where they focus more on how that affected their lives, the psychological, the emotional, sometimes the spiritual.
And how is that different? Do people who've been incarcerated for long periods of time typically, obviously that's a huge transition to make, and it's a big change from what they're used to. So why is it important for people who are coming out of an inmate situation to get that sort of counseling?
Well, if they feel uncomfortable doing that reactivation process, trying to adjust can be very difficult for them. Simple as learning how to operate a microwave or learning how to use public transportation. They need assistance with that, and if they're not feeling somewhat confident and supported by people that are out here, then there's a tendency to isolate, which isn't good, or also result to old behavior, which is something that a lot of people feel more comfortable with coming out of the institutions.
Absolutely. Understandably, I think a lot of times we don't think about some of these very basic needs that people have coming out of these institutions. Tell me a little bit about your background and how you wound up running programs like this and developing curriculum so specific.
Well, originally I'm from Los Angeles, South Central LA, and I grew up in a neighborhood and was very much saturated into a subculture of gangs and things of that nature. And as a result, I ended up getting in trouble and being in the youth authorities, camps, and things of that nature. And it was there that I started to learn that I had to really address some other issues that were more personal to me. It wasn't my parents, it wasn't the system necessarily, but it was something that I needed to change about the way I was thinking. And so that kind of spurred me to start delving into that. And the more I was into my process, the more I discovered about myself and why I made the decisions that I had made at the time. Then I started to document that and felt like I could use this insight to help other people.
So you draw heavily from your own personal experience. Talk to me about how that informs what you choose to teach people coming out of the system.
Well, I think one of the things I discovered about myself is that I had a need to be able to identify and explain what I was experiencing. The inability at that time to, say, articulate a feeling or a thought equivalent to the way that I had experienced it made me feel lack of confidence, made me feel inadequate at certain times. And then so I had to develop some kind of way to build my confidence up, to know that I could live with a degree of certainty.
And do inmates coming out of programs in California, coming out of institutions in California, automatically have access to your program, or how does that work?
Well, I go and visit different programs, and a lot of times after people who've met me had an opportunity to witness what I do in terms of seminars or workshops, or just sharing my story and how I discovered things that enable me to live successful at life now, I make myself available in that way.
Okay, it just sounds like you have such a unique perspective and a lot to offer people who are coming out of the program, not just from an educational or a curriculum or counseling standpoint, but also just from a personal standpoint, having been there. You're doing great work, and we so appreciate having you on the program. Thank you so much. To send Al an email, you can actually reach him at mralsasser. That's Mr. Al Sasser at gmail.com, mralsasser at gmail.com. We'll be back with more Black Renaissance right after this break.